In April 2013 at 10 a.m., a 911 call was made. A man stated his niece was non-responsive. He claimed the child is 3 years old. She has asthma and is throwing up yellow stuff. Her breathing was real slow and she had not opened her eyes. Patrol units then responded to 2706 Martin Luther King Way in Sarasota, Florida. This child, Jewel Howard, was then taken to the hospital. Unfortunately, life-saving measures had failed. Members of the medical staff exited the room and family members were screaming hysterically. Jewel Howard died at 11:30 a.m. Her mother was Asia Rosier. She was 22 at the time. She is a suspect in this case. Jewel's father was Joshua Howard. He is not a suspect in this case. Finally, Asia's boyfriend is Jumar Edwards. He is a suspect in this case. Police spoke with them all in the ER waiting room. They asked Asia about Jewel's medical history and Asia discussed the asthma problems. However, the doctor indicated that her death was related to something other than asthma. Asia stated that she wanted an autopsy to find out what happened and why her baby died. Here is a video of that request.
I want them to look deeper into, I want a full autopsy done. This is why I really came down.
Okay.
They did a preliminary.
Okay. Right.
I want a full one done because this, from my understanding, they said internal bleeding. I feel as if my child was internally bleeding for a while.
Now, I do have the full interview videos of Asia and Jumar. They'll be released this Friday on my interrogations channel. Subscribe there. 6 p.m. on Friday, they'll be released. You can watch this now, get some background information, and then you can see from their behavior if they are truthful. Now let me go through some of Jewel's medical history. Jewel, at age 4 months, was examined at the ER after Asia stated that she fell out of her arms and the back of the head went onto the carpet. Asia stated the mark on her forehead was a result of the carpet, but this was strange as Asia claimed the child went onto the carpet from the back of the head. So why is there a mark on the forehead? In December of 2010, Jewel was seen at ER for a persistent cough. In January of 2011, she was again examined for the same symptoms. In March of 2011, Jewel was treated at the ER for fever and shortness of breath. But then, in March 2013, Jewel was treated in the ER for a laceration to her lower lip. Asia told the nurse she thinks Jewel sunk her teeth into her own lip because she was mad that I had left the house. But when the nurse asked Jewel who gave her a boo-boo, she said, "I did it myself." A boo-boo as in the mark on her lip. Asia claimed Jewel has a history of injuring herself since she was 1 year old and has a referral to a therapist. As for her asthma, on the 6th of March 2013, Jewel was seen at a local clinic. She was accompanied by her father, Joshua Howard, and Tiffany Howard, her grandma. The notes for the visit indicate that Jewel generally stays with her mother, but recently it was described that Jewel would be spending more time with Tiffany. You see, Tiffany stated that this change is mainly to make sure that Jewel is getting the right medical care and medications are being given appropriately. Jewel's history of asthma was being treated with albuterol and a nebulizer. Let's go into what actually happened when she died. Now, the day before, on April the 10th, Jewel was at her grandma's home and there had not been any problems. When Jewel woke up on the next day, she vomited and just went back to sleep. But when the autopsy was complete, the police learned Jewel had internal injuries and that the medical examiner ruled the death a homicide. Jewel had a lacerated liver and other liver damage, as well as injuries including 2 broken ribs. So because of this, Asia's other daughter, Jumar Edwards, was taken into custody by the Department of Children and Families. See, at the time, Asia was dating Jumar Edwards and they both arrived at the police station to discuss the case. They were not under arrest. They went on their own accord. And how many times have you seen this, where the suspects need clarification? They need to feel at ease and they're desperate for information, hoping they are not considered. Asia told police that while at home, Jewel was the princess of the world and she could do whatever she wanted to. She was adamant she did not do this to her child. She believed if a mother mistreats their child too much, then they are traumatized. She said that she disciplines her by taking things from her, such as her toys, or doesn't allow her to play outside. Asia then claimed her boyfriend Jumar picked her up and put her over his shoulder. This might have been the reason why she broke her ribs. She said the last time that Jewel threw up, her heart stopped, and there is no way that a child's heart would stop like that for no reason. The police then spoke with Jumar. He said he usually cared for his daughter Jumar during the day at Asia's residence. He said Asia and Jewel came home the night before at 8 p.m. Jewel came into the residence and said she needed to go to the bathroom, which she did and had a bowel movement, as in she did a number 2. But then Jewel vomited and there was blood in the vomit. He said Asia called Jewel's grandma, Tiffany, and asked her what Jewel ate because she was throwing up. It was not uncommon for a little bit of blood to be in Jewel's vomit because she is sick a lot. Jewel stated that she was okay, but her stomach hurt and she wanted to lie down. Jumar then left the house and went to his mother's home. The next morning, he returned, and his cousin was watching the children in Asia's house, which included Jewel. Once he got to Asia's house, he checked on the kids and they were asleep. Asia at the time was at work, and once she came home, she tried to get Jewel dressed as she had a doctor's appointment for the aforementioned vomiting. As Asia lifted her out of bed, Jewel's head fell backwards as if she were unconscious. This is when they called 911. While on the phone to the operator, Jumar was holding Jewel. She vomited down his back, and he pulled her up and looked at her and said, "Oh my God, please don't tell me this baby just died here on my shoulder." He then ran with Jewel to the ambulance and gave her to one of them. He told them the vomit was a yellow liquid and there was no blood in it. This is when they went to the hospital. Now, when they spoke to police earlier, what they failed to mention was this laceration on their lip, which was being investigated by the Department of Children and Families. You see, Jumar explained that sometimes when Jewel gets mad, she would do things and she would sink her teeth into her lip. He believed that Jewel's grandmother, Tiffany, doesn't like him, and how Tiffany always tried to blame him for everything. One time, Jewel had wet the bed and it was Tiffany who physically disciplined her. He said the way Jewel acts when she comes home from Tiffany's was quite sketchy. What's also strange is 2 days later, on the Friday after her death, police went to take a look inside the house and they noticed that Jewel's bed had been moved, and when Jumar saw the police, he ran away. So then the police decided to speak to those who knew the family. They contacted Paris Reddick and Carolyn Wheeler. They were Jewel's teachers at school. They indicated Jewel was a happy, energetic child and very verbal for her age. There were only 2 or 3 occasions when they had to contact her mother due to any health or medical related issues. The most obvious issue concerning Jewel was her poor attendance. When she was absent, it was never for 1 day or 2 days, it was normally 3 or 4. Paris stated Jewel was usually dropped off by Asia or Jumar and was normally picked up in the afternoon by Tiffany Howard. Jewel, whilst at school, had a very good appetite, and you knew something was wrong if Jewel did not want to eat. The teachers told police that Jewel was a girly girl. She enjoyed playing dress-up and housekeeping. They also mentioned they were aware of Jewel's asthma. The teachers said there were 4 or 5 times that they could recall where Jewel was experiencing some breathing difficulty, such as wheezing, so Asia would be called and she would take Jewel home. However, they both did say one time they saw her with a bruise on her head, but Jewel claimed she did it herself. They could not recall a time after Jewel ate she became sick and had to throw up. By the way, if you do like this video, please subscribe. So then police went back to the house. They went to search the residence again and they spoke to Asia. She discussed the asthma issues and she herself has been experiencing anxiety attacks. She said when she arrived home the night before, she got Jewel out of the car. Jewel already had dinner at her grandma's home. She had chicken and corn. She gave her a quick bath because Jewel was saying she was sleepy. Jewel complained her stomach hurt and then she vomited and there was blood in her vomit. Jewel went to bed for a short time and then got up and said she had to go to the bathroom for a boo-boo, so she's reconfirming the story to police. But then she told police at this moment Jewel was weak and lethargic. Asia said that the cousin I mentioned earlier, Dwanisha Mitchell, came over to her residence. She came to watch the children while Asia had to go to a meeting at work. She said Mitchell arrived just before 8 in the morning. Later, she got Jewel and Jumaya up before she left for work. and gave them their asthma treatments. When she finished work, she called Jumar. She asked Jumar what Jewel was doing, and he said she was sleeping. But in this call, Jumar told her to hurry up and get back home because he knew something was wrong by the way Jewel was acting. She was weak, she couldn't walk, and normally she would be up and getting ready for school. When Asia got home, she tried to get Jewel dressed for school, but realized Jewel was limp and Jamal had to hold her head or she would have broken her neck. Jewel's eyes were wide open, she was not talking. Asia said she started to yell Jewel's name, but Jumar told her not to yell. They then put her down on the couch. They eventually took her outside and Jumar put her on the backseat of their car. Jewel had no pulse at that time. Asia said she heard the ambulance approach and went to flag them down, and then she went to the hospital where she perished. Now, after the search of the residence was complete, Asia wanted to speak to police privately. She said she had lied about Mitchell watching the children on that morning. She said she needed to leave to go to a meeting at work and instead left the children in the care of Jumar. She said she lied because there is an investigation with the Department of Children and Families regarding the laceration on Jewel's lip, and they told her that Jumar should not be left alone with the children until this investigation was complete. And when police did finally get to Jumar and ask him, he said he had in fact watched the children that morning. Police then spoke with Jewel's biological father, Joshua Howard. They asked Howard about the previous DCF reports. Howard said that Jewel initially told him Jumar is the one that cut the lip. Him and Asia then argued about Jumar mistreating Jewel. Asia told him, no, Jewel did this to herself. But Joshua has never known Jewel to intentionally harm or injure herself. He said earlier that year of 2013, he noticed Jewel had a bruise on her right thigh. There was never an explanation for the injury, even though he did ask Asia about it. Joshua suggested that since Jumar came into the picture, Jewel did not want to go home with Asia. She was always upset and wanted to stay with Tiffany, her grandma. Joshua went on to tell police that 2 weeks before her death, Jewel had been sick. She was unable to keep food and fluids down. She was vomiting and she had lost some weight. He said her eyes appeared to be sunk in, so he and Tiffany took her to the emergency room. She was examined and prescribed more of the same medication she normally takes for her asthma. He said a few days later she was back to normal. Police then went to speak with Aunt Diane. She said Asia is her niece and she was Asia's legal guardian. Asia did reside with her for approximately 10 years and she moved out when she was 18. After Jemiah was born, Asia, Jewel and Jemiah lived with her for a month or so. Police then asked her about a domestic incident in December 2012, which she witnessed. You see, Diane received a phone call from one of Asia's friends and was told Jumar and Asia are having problems. She drove to Asia's residence, but Asia was not there. She was told Asia's brother picked her up. She drove by Asia's residence a few minutes later and saw Asia standing in the doorway. She parked her van in Asia's driveway in front of the house. She could see that Jumar and Asia were exchanging words, but it did not appear they were in each other's space. A short time later, Asia said something and then walked out towards her van. She was then standing in front of the van when Jumar approached her and assaulted Asia in the side of the head. Asia fell to the ground and was transported to the ER by ambulance. Asia called Diane and asked her to pick her up from the ER. That was the only time Diane witnessed a domestic incident between the two. She said Asia did not discuss her relationship with Jumar after that incident. And after Jewel died, Asia came over to her residence with Jewel's bed. Asia was very distraught, put the bed in the living room and just laid down on the bed for several hours. Asia did not sleep at her residence that night or any other night since then. At this point, police were trying to get more information on how Jewel was being treated and if anyone had seen cases of mistreatment. This is where we come on to Linda Bryant Dasher. She was at Tiffany's residence the day before Jewel died. She said Tiffany was putting beads in Jewel's hair. Jewel mentioned she was hungry, and it was about the same time that her other aunt, Aunt Tony, arrived home from work. Linda said she told Tony Jewel was hungry, so Tony put a cup of noodles into the microwave. Jewel ate all the noodles. But as Tiffany was finishing her hair, Jewel started to cry. Linda said Jewel was frustrated and just wanted to get up because it had taken a while to get her hair done. After her hair was done, Jewel played for a while. Linda stated she has observed Jewel's behavior on numerous occasions, and Jewel never wanted to go with her mother whenever she came to pick her up. In fact, approximately 1 month before, when Asia came to pick her up, Jewel didn't want to go. She was crying and wanted to stay with Aunt Tony. She said Asia was trying to convince her to go because they were going to eat at Red Lobster, but Jewel didn't want to go. Linda said that was the only time she saw her assault Jewel. There were numerous times when Jewel was crying and screaming because she did not want to go home with her mother. She claimed Asia did not even have to be present or in the area, but if someone mentioned to Jewel that her mother was coming, Jewel would become hysterical. Linda said something was going on at the residence for Jewel to act in that way. This was not normal. Linda drove a school bus and she had been around kids for 30 years. She was able to tell if something is not right. Now, as for the autopsy report, there were injuries to Jewel's abdomen, the broken ribs, and the subsequent internal bleeding which ultimately led to her death. There was a bruise on the left side of Jewel's head between her temple and ear. Her liver was ruptured and there was damage to other internal organs, and she started bleeding internally. Her death had nothing to do with asthma. When police confronted Asia with this information, this is what she said.
It's not a scratch.
My baby, my
Okay.
baby, my baby. No! Ah!
So, with the autopsy report, Asia and Jumar were arrested on suspicion of child neglect. As reported, Joel died with a crushed liver, 2 broken ribs, and other internal injuries. This trauma was as severe as getting hit by a vehicle. But prosecutors could not explain what caused the injuries. It's clear if she had all these internal injuries, then someone did this to her. But again, proving this was quite difficult given all the information that was available. So the judge did sentence Asia to 10 years. Jumar was sentenced to 15 because he was at home when they believed this happened. Asia, however, was eventually released from prison. Jumar is scheduled to be released in 2026. And I know you're confused. What exactly happened? Well, as I said, their interviews will be available this Friday at 6 p.m. Eastern Time. They'll tell you what happened. See you then.